and get things started this evening. Welcome to the second Climate and Energy Literacy webinar in our four-part Climate and Energy webinar series. We are really excited to have you all here this evening. And I know participants will be kind of filtering in, but we need to get things going because we've got a lot of great things to share with you this evening. Some of you are returning to us this evening, and some of you are brand new. So for those of you that are new, just so you can meet the folks behind the scenes here and in front, I guess, as well. Your hosts this evening are myself. I'm Kristen Poppleton. I'm the Director of Education here at the Will Steger Foundation. And we'd like to call him Mr. HQ. John Smith is behind the scenes making sure this all runs smoothly this evening. And John Smith is the education assistant here at the foundation as well. The two of us make everything happen education-wise here. And for those of you that maybe haven't heard of the Will Steger Foundation before, we were founded in 2006 by Polar Explorer Will Steger, and our mission is to educate and empower people to engage in climate change solutions. And we do this through a couple different program areas. This evening's program comes through our education and falls under our education mission, which is really supporting educators, students, and the public with resources on climate change, its implications, and solutions. And this evening's webinar will be providing a little bit of professional development and then also highlighting some of our resources. We also this evening, though, are sort of touching on our Emerging Leaders program, which aims to grow a stronger climate movement by educating, empowering, and engaging a new generation of climate leadership. And so you'll be hearing from some of those young leaders this evening. Before we jump a little bit further, I just want to share with you some of the reasons that you shared that why you were actually here this evening. So we've got some interested parents out there this evening. Those of you, some of you, a lot of you actually showed an interest in how to engage students in climate policy. So you're in luck. You'll be hearing a lot about that. Someone mentioned that they needed to get recharged with young energy. I thought that was great. Hopefully we can do some recharging this evening. And primarily working with elementary level students and interesting and broadening your scope was another reason folks were here. So before we go any further, though, I just wanted to briefly talk about why would we even decide to include a session on climate policy when we're talking about climate and energy literacy. And the first reason really is that discussing and acting on solutions is really a foundational tenet of environmental ed, and our organization looks at climate change through the lens of environmental education. You can go ahead and read this quote from one of our great thinkers in the field of environmental ed. But environmental issues really need to include more than just awareness and knowledge. And the students that you'll hear from this evening have really been given this opportunity to develop a sense of ownership and empowerment, and have become what I would say are responsible and active citizens. But we also know that communicating only about the science of climate change does not necessarily elicit change, and it actually can be detrimental. And this is I think, something that a lot of people get wrong. They think if they just keep providing more information about climate change, people will understand. And it's just as important to include solutions and discussion of solutions. And so this is another reason. It's also just practical and necessary. We need to know about the science, but we also need to know about the solutions in order for something to actually happen in terms of mitigation, in terms of adaptation, in terms of conservation regarding climate change. And then finally, we really believe and we know that youth voice is important and it's powerful. And they are the generation that will be most impacted by climate change. And the United Nations recognizes this as well, that young people really have to be prepared to play a key role within this context of climate change mitigation and adaptation and understanding the impacts of the future. So that said, so this evening I'm very, very happy that we can include the voice of some youth, and knowing that they're really an important part of the equation. And those youth come to us from the School of Environmental Studies, which has been a great partner with us over the years. We've had 3 of our summer institutes there. We've included a number of their youth in our Emerging Leaders program. And their science teacher, Craig Johnson, has been a great partner and a great supporter of us over the years as well, and really a model, what I would say a model environmental educator in the field. Environmental educator for over 20 years, and just a side note, my former professor at St. Olaf College before going to the high school realm. And with that, I'd like to pass it over to our lovely presenters this evening. Take it away.
Well, thank you, Kristen, very much, and it's a pleasure to be here. We really appreciate the invitation. My name is Craig Johnson, and I teach at the School of Environmental Studies. We're going to speak with you tonight a little bit about an experience that our students have had this past November, and share just a little bit of about our school. School of Environmental Studies is a school of District 196 in Apple Valley, Minnesota. It's an optional school of choice. So the students that you'll meet tonight have chosen to come to SES for their last 2 years of high school. It's a school that was built around the mission of developing a community of learners that study and learn about the relationship between people and their environments. And it was built around the premise that powerful learning comes from integrated learning, experiential learning, and learning as often as possible in authentic ways in the community. And the experience you're going to hear about tonight really represents one of our efforts, an ongoing everyday kind of effort to really live out that mission in the world. And so we're going to be sharing with you an experience that we've had this past November at the United Nations Climate Change Conference, and I have a number of my students with me this evening, and we'll move through those students and let them share what they experienced this past fall. Starting with Maddie. Maddie, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Maddie Marrier, and I'm one of the students who attended COP19 this year. For those of you who don't know what UNFCCC is, it stands for United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. The goal of the convention is to lower GHG, or greenhouse gas emissions. It was first introduced as an International Environmental Tree Day, and it was first held in Rio de Janeiro in 1992. Now when we say COP, it means Conference of the Parties. More than 190 countries attend. This year was the 19th year of the conference, so that means COP19.
We've been involved since 2009, sending our first delegation to Copenhagen. Our school is accredited as an official observer organization through the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, and has been since 2009. So this group of students you'll be hearing from this evening represent the 4th group that we've had attend these conferences. And Maddie, you can maybe share a little bit about how you came to be a delegate.
Yeah, students get involved by first being 18 by the start of the conference. Then we go through an application process followed by an interview. Some of the key issues that were talked about at COP19 were adaptation, mitigation, technology, finance, and education. And then from here, my fellow students who also attended COP19 are going to share a little bit about each of these topics.
Hi, I'm Casey Gersh. Myself and Nicole Wolf were delegates at the conference, and as well as all the other students. But 2 of the topics we focused on while we were there were adaptation and mitigation. For those of you who don't know, adaptation is adapting to the changing environment that results from climate change, whereas mitigation is trying to lower the emissions in order to prevent climate change. And Nicole will talk about that a little more later. But in regards to adaptation, there wasn't a lot of new stuff at the conference on that. It was more working towards financing it, and that's a big, whole, messy issue. But there was a lot of talk about how adaptation and mitigation can work together in projects and do both efforts out of one thing, which is really beneficial to the communities involved. And there also was a lot on loss and damage, which is not exactly the same as adaptation, but they're very interwoven in regards to the issues they deal with. And loss and damage actually became a front and center issue partially as a result of the typhoon that hit the Philippines, basically the week of the conference, and there were some delegates who did not have contact with their families during parts of it because of that. And really what loss and damage is trying to deal with is the risk that results from the changes in climate and what we should be doing about it and how we should be dealing with it and how we're going to pay for it. And it just became a really large, complex thing that was being worked to be dealt with at the conference.
Hello, I'm Nicole, and like Casey said, I focus primarily on mitigation, which is efforts to reduce or prevent emissions of greenhouse gases. And I went primarily to REDD Plus conferences, or the reduction of emissions from deforestation and forest degradation plus, and they focus on mitigation by reducing agriculture expansion, conversion to pastureland, infrastructure development, destructive logging, fires, and many more things, which account for nearly 20% of global greenhouse gas emissions. And this year, REDD Plus started implementing projects to work with indigenous people of the countries that they work with. And they started working with the indigenous peoples because they found out that they've been living there for so long and they hadn't done anything like to destroy the forest, and they wanted to learn how to take care of the forest or get the resources from the forest without destroying the forest along with it. And Norway had been working on a proposal for many years, and they finally got it passed while we were at the conference. And it was to give Indonesia $1 billion to reduce emissions in their countries, as well as work to protect their forests from deforestation.
At the conference, we met a lot of people, and it was one of the most interesting parts of it was just everyone who was there. One of my favorite parts is actually the RINGO meetings, and RINGO stands for Research and Independent Non-Governmental Organizations. And it was the first day, and I was walking around the exhibit hall, and all these places have these different booths, and I guess I was looking a little lost and overwhelmed, as I felt, in this massive event. And Greg Walker was there he was working on the booth, and he invited me to one of the RINGO meeting the next morning, and it turns out he's a member of the steering committee for it. But I didn't know that at the time, and so I went to the meeting, and it was just all these different observers like us, except most of them were professional researchers and so forth, and they were just in sharing what they were learning at the conference, because it's so big you cannot track everything, and so it sort of gave me a little bit of a way to try and do so, because people would come and say, oh, I learned this at this exhibit regarding this, and it was really cool. And they weren't like dismissive, oh, you're just a high school student. They really wanted to know like what we were interested in learning about and how we want to deal with it. And everyone there was really friendly, and they just encouraged to think deeper and broader and more complexly about the issues, and it was really possibly my favorite part.
My favorite part was because we got to go to so many presentations and saw so many speakers. And one speaker really stuck out to me, and that was Heru Prasetyo, and he ended up being the co-chair of REDD Plus Indonesia. And I really liked the way that he spoke, and it just all made sense, and it was really good. And so Mr. Johnson ended up finding him in the hallway and asking if he would come talk to us. And he agreed to, and we got to have dinner with him and get questions answered. And then later the next week, we got invited to the Warsaw Marriott Hotel to go to their implementing meeting for the Norway proposal, and it was very formal, and we were very excited to be there, and it was really cool, and I really enjoyed that. And now we're going to send it off to two more of our classmates, Jennifer and Kelly, to talk about more things that we learned about.
All right, well, the thing that I focused on while at the conference was technology. Within the conference, the technological focus was developed countries taking all practical steps to promote, facilitate, and finance the transfer of or access to environmentally sound technologies to developing countries to enable them to implement the provisions of the convention. This is to promote the development and transfer of environmentally sound technologies in order to support action on mitigation and adaptation to climate change.
Hi, I'm Kelly or Nikki. About technology, the thing is that what might work in one place does not work in another place. It's very site specific, and with that, we can take a lot of action, but it's all about who's going to finance it. Everyone agrees that climate change is an awesome thing. We really want it to happen, but not everyone agrees on how we should fund it or who should fund it specifically. A lot of the developing countries want the developed countries to fund it since they are mainly responsible for it. However, they don't necessarily feel the same way or are stepping up to the plate to do so. Germany, Norway, and Britain are really doing a lot in their own communities as well as others. However, it's not always enough, and there really is a big issue with who's going to fund it.
As far as finance goes with developed and developing countries, a big problem with the developed countries is they're not sure where their money is going or which countries actually need the technology or how much technology they need. So throughout the discussions and sessions that we attended, many of the main issues were assessments for the technological needs of countries, their roadmaps, and they also focused on the importance of collaborative research, development, and demonstration of technology.
One of the main programs that the Secretariat has created is the Momentum for Change, which highlights many organizations around the world that are doing action in their own communities throughout the world. There are 4 different categories: urban poor, women for results, financing, and lastly, information and communication technology solutions. I attended many of these different side events, and one of them, as you can see on the PowerPoint, there's a Kenyan man that has this program creating bikes, and it's using renewable resources in the area. So they're using their own resources to help them have a better quality of life and increase their standard of living. There's a lot of different local action that is happening around the world, and if we increase the local pressure for governments to change, then we can increase federal changes. So hopefully that will happen.
Throughout the sessions too, we saw, just like the Kenyan man in that picture, we saw some local sessions, and we also got to see some global action sessions. And what I noticed personally just going to the local and global was that the local was way more efficient and got things done and had a lot more change within their societies. And whereas the global action, it was very slow and not much happened. So in comparison, local action is very important and is what's going to mainly make the changes. The learnings throughout the conference, one of the main things that I learned was that common goals should be focused on instead of the differences. Throughout the conference, specifically between developed and developing countries, there were sessions where they just focused on the differences and were kind of arguing back and forth about their different sides. And I found that this was very ineffective and not much got accomplished, and no one was able to see each other's perspective. So I saw that commonalities would be a lot more beneficial to focus on, and instead of focusing on the differences and talking about what we don't agree on, we should focus on our common goals and what we can do to achieve those. Along with the developing and developed countries, there was a lot of blaming going on for who is creating the climate change and who is emitting the most GHG. And this also led to people not being able to act because they were being blamed or they were blaming other people. So instead of focusing on the action, they were focusing on the blaming. So instead of talking about the blaming part, we should just stop the blame and decide to act and decide to do something about it, and ignore who did it or whatever, because it already happened.
We really do need to stop blaming people, and we need to act, because climate change is here and now. We in our own societies can make a difference, and going to this COP has really empowered me and motivated me to do something in my own community. And as my last year being here at SES, I am very motivated and passionate to do a difference and leave my own legacy here.
And with local communities, I think it's very important to promote and facilitate public access to information on climate change and its effects so that we can all participate in the action. Now we're going to be hearing from Keanu and Jillian about the future of green economy.
Hello, my name is Keanu Driscoll-Sherlin.
And my name is Jillian Wycor, and I'd just like to thank you guys so much for being here with us today.
To begin the discussion of a future within a green economy and a green job market, we must view this problem as a problem all humans must face, young or old.
Having the ability to watch the discussion as a student about the green economy and the green job market live was incredible, and having the ability to discuss with the world's experts about how to move forward into a better future, being part of the youth who, as they would always remind us, will soon become the future, was great. It's important for us as students and future leaders to understand our impact and how we can change the way that we live. No complicated issue will ever have a simple fix.
The first step to developing a green economy is developing a global population of people well educated in eco-literacy and understanding their place within the environment. As I watched an event presented by Global Child Institute and other presenters from UNICEF, many people had questions pertaining to why youth aren't allowed inside of these COP conferences, but the real question is, why aren't the ideals of COP within our school systems? If youth are not taught about the environment, they will continue through their lives without the knowledge they need to be aware of if we are to have any hope in reducing our carbon footprint.
We cannot divorce youth from the discussion of climate change policies and the green economy. I listened to Nick Anderson, a student from the US like myself, discuss fixing our current recession while actively fighting climate change. By supporting K-12 education and specifically non-university students, we can create an eco-literate generation who can act in these newly created green service jobs as a way to collaborate both climate solutions and job opportunities. Creating a green job market in the US where our people need them and where our climate needs it as well.
I watched a side event talking about jobs within the national gas line companies that could generate more jobs for workforces while bettering the systematic functions of society. and while bettering and reducing the impacts of methane leaking from old and outdated infrastructure. Natural gas lines over 150 years are made of cast iron, which are really easily corrodable. And some pipelines are even made from wood.
I, at one point during the conference, heard Dave Foster of the Blue-Green Alliance say that 15% of the United States clean water leaks directly out of our pipes. By creating these new green jobs, we can modernize and create efficiency within our economies and our country's infrastructure while ensuring economic growth using climate-smart infrastructure, deploying clean energy, putting a price on our carbon, and training skills for a green job labor force.
As I look into my own future, I look to further my own education to design eco-friendly and environmentally safe infrastructure and join this increasingly important green job market.
The future of a green economy may sometimes appear bleak, but with the fundamental education of both economics and environment, our future can look brighter and greener. Now I'd like to bring it back to Maddie and Mr. Johnson, who would talk to you a little bit more about education and the future. Thank you.
Okay, so what happened in Warsaw? Well, first of all, the roadmap from COP18 was furthered, and this roadmap is called the Durban Platform. So where does all this money come from? Well, it comes from the Green Climate Fund, which was also advanced, and then also the long-term finance for adaptation. In Warsaw, the mechanism for loss and damage was advanced, and most importantly, there was more planning for COP21 in Paris, which is where the new Kyoto Protocol will be formed. So what did we take away from this? I think we all took away something that was specific to our own interests, but I also think we took away similar feelings about the experience. We all went into this conference knowing we were going to be walking amongst world leaders who have a lot of power over the world. We came out of the conference realizing how much power we have. These powerful people that we find ourselves admiring over were just as admirable of us. They made it known that it is our responsibility to carry on their legacy, and it's important that we spread this through generations. Being SES students, we already know that we can make a difference, but hearing world leaders tell us the same thing just encourages us to fulfill that mission.
Thanks, Maddie. One other thing we'd like to talk just a little bit about, Chris and I have had conversations about this before, and when she's asked me, why do you do this? It seems like a lot of work and a lot of effort, and it is, but at SES, the mission of the school and our commitment to a philosophy of education includes these authentic kinds of experiences. And so we have field studies that range from studies throughout Minnesota all the way to international experiences, primarily because field studies really help students authentically experience the relationship between people and their environments. And that learning extends well beyond the content that might be part of a course. At COP and at these COP experiences, students construct their own understandings in an authentic context. It's one thing to say that the international community views climate change in a certain way. It's another thing for these students to move about a conference where literally every country in the world, minus 2 or 3, but over 190 countries are represented, and for those students to interact with these people and hear in personal first-hand ways the way climate change is affecting them, affecting their culture, affecting their home. It also really helps the students gain confidence to engage the world outside of their comfort zone. Certainly in the United States, if we choose to be, we can be pretty insulated from the events in the world and from places in the world. But when a student is visiting with someone from Kiribati or an island nation that is really, really threatened by climate change, it becomes a lot more real, and it allows those students to engage those people and engage that issue that stretches them beyond what they might experience at home. I noticed one of the comments earlier asked about climate change. At SES, our goal is to create a literate citizenry, a citizenry that's motivated to engage the issues and problems of the world that they find themselves in, and to do that in effective ways. So it is not a process where we pick and choose sides with climate change, but instead use it as a way to get kids to engage the complexities of a global issue. I often call climate change the perfect global problem to study. Be good any way, but by simultaneously considering all kinds of perspectives: science, politics, economics, geography, ethics, culture. It's a really a issue-based Rubik's Cube of sorts. And as soon as you lean too far one direction, you realize that there are big implications from another angle. So the real power is in getting kids to see this issue in a system context and have them explore that in that way. Why COP and why the climate change conferences? The students have a front row seat to observe the international community address a global problem. At COP, there are both what one might assume to be the ongoing negotiations and the sort of picture everyone might have about a United Nations meeting with all the countries in the world debating a particular issue. But there are also what are called side events or activities that allow for civil society, including organizations like our foundation and others from around the world, to share what they know and share their information about their own circumstances and their own work. It allows, as I said earlier, for the students to interact with people from virtually every country in the world. For us, we also spend a great deal of time fostering relationships with schools, and this is a powerful educational opportunity when students from our school have a chance to form a joint delegation with students from another part of the world, from another school, from another setting, from another culture, and explore this issue of climate change together. So it's been a very powerful experience for the kids. The kids didn't talk a lot, or the students, excuse me, didn't talk a lot about it this evening, but they are really involved in this at home as well. It's interesting to watch them come back and to see what they bring back, to see what motivations they bring with them, to see what ways they want to engage this issue or other issues that are ancillary to it, and how they choose to do that. Of the 7 students that are here tonight, I think every one of them has begun work in one way or another on some issue that really has its origins in climate change and the potential impacts of climate change. So it really does nurture that motivation to address issues at home. And also, and we thank the Will Steger Foundation for this, provides opportunities for them to share what they've learned and to share their experiences with others along the way as well. I'll leave this slide up, and my understanding is this link is live, and you can take a look at it. This is a little YouTube clip from the COP conference in Doha, Qatar last year, and it's about a 3-minute clip with one of our students talking a little bit about how she saw the value of experiencing the opportunity to be a delegate at COP, and how she sees it fitting into her at that time her high school career, and how she sees it fitting into her evolving as an effective citizen. So what's next? We have attended, as I mentioned earlier, 4 different climate conferences, and we are making plans and putting the pieces in place, or working to put the pieces in place, to send a delegation to Lima, Peru next December, and looking forward in 2 years to COP21 in Paris. I'm not sure if it came out in the context of what was shared this evening, but a good deal of effort since 2009 has been focused on having the international community be in a position to establish a new international agreement in 2015 in Paris. And so it is expected, it is anticipated that, at least from a global perspective, that December 2015 will be a big deal on the international scene in terms of climate. But I think the students made it clear that really the idea is climate change is not going to be addressed sitting around and waiting for the international community to wave a magic wand and have something spectacular happen. It's going to happen instead in the trenches. It's going to happen in a mosaic of actions, from individual choice to schools to communities to cities and states. And it's exciting as an educator to see students engage this issue in an attempt to make a difference. I'd like to thank Kristen again just for inviting us and having us part of this webinar series. On behalf of SES, I really do have to acknowledge publicly that the Steger Foundation has been a tremendous partner of SES, certainly the strongest and most beneficial partner in the programs that I've been part of, going back as far as, I guess, 2006 and 7. So we really appreciate that, and we thank the Steger Foundation for its ongoing support. And with that, I think, Kristen, I'll let you run the show here.
Oh, run the show. Awesome. Can everyone hear me? Thumbs up. Awesome. Well, thank you guys. That was just great. That was really awesome to hear about your experience. And I see already we've got a ton of questions coming in, and I'm really glad so if you guys, while I'm kind of closing things out here, want to scroll through those questions, then you will be kind of figure out what you're going to say. But before we jump to the questions, I did want to share with you all a little bit more about ways that you might be able to bring climate change policy to your educational setting. One of our big goals here for this webinar series was not to just provide you all with some content, but also to provide you with some resources. And just to kind of put this in context, we became connected to the Climate Conference of the Parties with COP15, and we're able to actually send a delegation of young people from around the Midwest to Copenhagen. And I wanted to play a short clip kind of highlighting that particular program to start things off here. So I'm going to hit play.
Hi, my name is Charlie, and I'm here with the Will Seeger Foundation in partnership with Stonyfield Farm. And I am standing right in front of the U.S. Center at COP15, where we just had a conference with some elementary school students from the Washington, D.C. area, and it was fantastic.
As a Midwest delegation, we're working to highlight the opportunities that the Midwest can bring to help solve climate change. And we're bringing it to an international level, and then we're bringing the international negotiations back home to the United States and to the Midwest.
You can create the future that you want. You have that power. You have the ability to create the future you want right now, so do it.
I have also been really impressed with how the youth internationally have been working together. I think it's really powerful that we're all working at home and helping to solve climate change, but also when we're here, we're all working together and we're all trying to resolve problems. So I think that's really, really powerful.
Thank you so much for your amazing presentation.
Great. So that video highlighted the what we called Expedition Copenhagen, and one of the big outcomes of that particular program was a curriculum that those delegates brought into schools around the Midwest, helping introduce topics related to the climate negotiations. And you can see on this slide here, carbon cycle, how do you make target atmospheric levels, how do you decide if technologies are part of the equation, what is cap and trade, what is a carbon tax, how do we address equity in international negotiations, and then finally, how do you craft a position statement? And this part of the curriculum was really powerful when it was being used by them, and since then as well, because the delegates were able to go around the Midwest and collect a huge binder of position statements from students about what they thought about climate change. And since then, people have been using that, and we can post the link to downloading that curriculum for free from our website if you're interested in getting it yourself. It's called Citizen Climate. But students just here in the Twin Cities have used it, and actually had representatives come and talk to their class about how they're addressing climate and energy issues themselves. And it's also been used just by some of the idea of crafting position statements has been used by our after-school Minnesota Youth Engagement Program. And I wanted to just play another short video for you here of one of the students that was in that program a few years ago sharing his position before our legislature. And so just an example of how to get high school students engaged with this and sharing what they think about these issues.
If you could identify yourself for the record and then go to it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Cole Norgarden. I am a 10th grader at the Blake School in Minneapolis, and I am also co-chair of Youth Environmental Activists of Minnesota, on which I am speaking on behalf of today. And as a young person, I am in opposition of House File 72, which would lift a ban on carbon dioxide emissions produced by utilities in Minnesota. Lifting this ban is undoing progress we have made towards achieving energy sustainability in Minnesota. This is not a mistake we can afford to make with the futures of youth like myself at stake. We refuse to inherit the costs coal imposes on Minnesota's communities, both environmental and economic, costs we will have to deal with if carbon dioxide emissions go unchecked. Furthermore, since there is no current need for building new coal-fired plants in Minnesota, this repeal is completely unnecessary. On a personal level, my grandfather was employed by Northern States Power for over 30 years and worked as an engineer on all 3 units of the Sherco plant in Becker, Minnesota. After retiring, my grandfather recognized the importance of establishing renewable energy infrastructure and ending our reliance on fossil fuels. He told me that while plants like Sherco were necessary for meeting the demand at the time they were built, burning coal was not the future of energy in Minnesota.
So just another example of what students are capable of, and especially when they feel very connected to an issue. And Cole, as you heard there, had a personal family connection with that, but the power of actually asking students to come up with thinking about and arguing for what they believe in. Just to highlight a few resources that might be useful to you if you're looking, there's the website for COP19 and the Framework Convention on Climate Change. There's actually a youth constituency that you can go to and find out more about. And then an article that was recently came out in our Institute on the Environment newsletter that highlights some feedback, some other perspectives on COP19. For those of you, it looks like we have maybe a few social studies educators in the audience. There are some suggestions about how to bring climate policy into the social studies classroom, and you can find those at this link. You can, as I mentioned earlier, all of this is going to be housed on a website. You'll get the link to tomorrow or Monday or Tuesday that has all these resources. So don't worry about if you're missing links right now or anything. And then before we turn it over, I just want to highlight two other opportunities for you. If you're interested in coming and experiencing as an educator what we have to offer, our Summer Institute is open right now, and we're accepting registration, and we'd love to have you there. There's more information on that on our website, but our keynote speaker, John Abraham, has just been solidified, and we have a ton of other great speakers as well. And then finally, there are 2 more webinars in our series, and they are going to be awesome. And our next one will feature Josh Schneiderman, who's with the Department of Energy as an Einstein educator, coming to us from DC, as well as Michael Arquin, who's the founder and director of KidWins. And he'll actually be doing an activity for us on camera highlighting how KidWin teaches about renewable energy. And I'm going to leave this up there. You can take the 2-page, that's a live link evaluation. But we're going to go back now and try and answer some of these great questions that came in. And so if you guys want to turn your microphones back on, and why don't I just, what I'll do is I'll read to you questions, and you can decide who's going to answer them. Sound good?
Hey, Kristen, can I just, I'll hand this over to the students, but I see one
Yeah.
from Brian at the very bottom here that kind of flows out of what you were just talking about. First of all, just a shout out to the institutes. They are tremendous professional development opportunities. And John Abraham, Brian asks a question here about what we did to prepare the students to participate in the conference. We have the good fortune at our school of having the opportunity to teach short courses, which are full-day, 7-day courses. And these students that attend as delegates take a preparation course. So they're well-versed in climate change, they're well-versed in COP and in UNFCCC and so on. John Abraham has been a real strong partner for us as well, and has been out to those courses and presented those courses. He's a tremendous presenter. So a lot of the, just to say, answer to Brian, preparation is absolutely essential in terms of getting the kids ready, because it is, as a a long-time educator, I've been to lots of conferences, and this is without question, by several magnitudes, the biggest, most multi-layered conference that you can go to. That I've ever been to. So I certainly, for the students who've been at very few, to start sort of at the Super Bowl of climate change conferences, it's very important that they do get ready. And we use the curriculum that Kristen was sharing. We use that. I use that resource extensively. To introduce IPCC and climate tax and climate, some of the climate policy pieces. So I encourage you to take a look at that if this is something that you're involved in teaching. I'll hand it over to the kids, and they can decide who's going to answer what, Kristen.
All right. Well, I was going to just point out Pam's question that's above Brian there is, I was asking if the students are working in their schools and communities to encourage change in daily lives that helps individuals decrease their greenhouse gas emissions. Is anyone doing anything now in the community that they want to talk about? Yeah.
Wait, who's talking?
You can go first, Kelly.
Wait, is it on? Well, I'm on the SESEF Foundation as a student rep with one of my friends, Leah, and we are working with the president to make the school LEED certified, and it has been a long-going project, but they've really needed some student involvement, and once Leah and I heard about this project, we really stepped up and are interested in helping out, and we set up a whole plan to get the school LEED certified. But the issue is a lot of funding, because we don't have a lot of funding as a public school. We need to figure out a way to get it ourselves. And there will be an SES brand coffee, hopefully in the future, if you guys want to purchase.
I'm starting to work on a project with local farmers and food in the schools, which will help lower GHG emissions from the transportation of food in schools, and as well as like water production and a lot of other things. But our district is actually already enrolled in a farm to schools program for local foods in the school lunches, and so I'm trying to make it larger. So specifically our school, I'm trying to make it a bigger program.
Is there anyone else that had something they wanted to say? Cool. Looks like we've got another question here. Someone was just saying, I think a few of you mentioned it, but were there teens from other countries at COP also that you maybe interacted with or heard from?
Mostly.
Yeah. What's that?
As far as any high schools, we aren't currently aware of any other that attended the conference, but one really cool experience that I had while in one of the side events, I was sitting between a professor from Manchester, I want to say, and a student who was studying law at Yale. And I said I went to the School of Environmental Studies, and she asked me if I meant the Yale School of Forestry, and I said, no, but thank you so much for thinking that. So there were a lot of young people there, but really highly educated, really involved, very smart college students. Were about the youngest that I met personally.
Cool.
I met.
Go ahead.
Sorry. I met 3 different people from the Scouts organization, and I don't believe any of them were in high school, but they look similar in age, and they were really well educated and are doing a lot in their own communities. So that was really interesting to hear from, and they're very passionate students, as well as they know a ton about how to survive in the great outdoors.
One of the real benefits of the students going is that youth to the COP process are really 18 to 30 years old. So we are the smallest fish in the biggest pond here when we go to this, and so it's really a tremendous opportunity for the students to not only bring what they know and bring their passions, but also to work with and work with peer role models, really, of young people that are passionate about this, maybe a little bit further, a few years further down the line than they are, but really represent the point in life where they're headed. And so it's pretty exciting as an educator to watch the students interact with the youth constituency and really get involved. And we've had a lot of sort of case studies, I guess, of past students, SES students who have attended as COP delegates, really get involved in their campus communities and as young adults in the issue, really gaining some confidence out of an experience where they had a chance to work with some youth that are really really competent and really passionate about this issue worldwide, and certainly youth from all over the world.
Great. I thought Caleb had a question about environmental ethics and conversations, but further, part of his question he asked that while at COP, were people with different views, so there's different world views that came in from across the world, Could the students see cultural differences in how different nations approached climate change? Anyone?
I think if I understand the question right, is how does different cultural aspects look at climate change differently? And you definitely can see a difference in the way different cultures want to change climate change, or change the way climate change is looked at, because some cultures look at fossil fuel as their main source of energy because it's cheaper, it's a lot easier to come by, and it's a lot more of how they make their income. So some companies actually, or some countries, more or less want to have more fossil fuel use than other countries, but there's obviously other countries that want to just eliminate fossil fuels completely. So you can definitely see a difference in the way different cultures look at climate change and within the global scale of things.
Cool.
Yeah, I also went to a lot of sessions too where a lot of developing countries that were smaller and didn't have a lot of money to spend on bigger technologies, they did little things like the bikes, or they made like solar lamps and like different kinds of fires and stuff like that that they normally use every day in cooking. So instead of using something that would release a lot more GHG, it was a lot lower and more efficient. So there's things like that where you know, you're going to the bigger meetings with developed countries and they're talking about all these big, expensive, fancy technology developments, and then there's these really small local communities that are doing little teeny things that are helping them lower the emissions, and that was really cool too, to see how you're just approaching it very differently based on what you can do and what's realistic.
Cool. Well, we have about 2 minutes left, and I thought it would be fitting or nice to end with a few of you briefly answering the question, what was the most powerful statement or story or fact that you learned that you could share with other high school students who don't care about climate change? What would you want them to know? How would you?
Okay, well, for me, it's really prevalent that we're all in this together. And even if it's the smallest little change that you make, or like turning off your lights or using a little less water, it all makes a difference. And all these huge world leaders are really depending on us to continue their legacy. We can't just let them do it. They need help. And we're all affecting the world. We all are creating this world where it's all on us, and we really need to get going. Not one person can just do it on their own.
Anyone?
It's not strictly at the conference, but the opening ceremony of sorts that they have. One of the International Panel on Climate Change, I think he was the president, I'm not 100% sure, but he basically brought up the point that climate change is not debatable in the scientific community, that I want to say it was like 95% of all scientists, it is not debatable that it is human-caused and that it is happening. And those are the two most important things to remember, even if you don't think it, that scientifically it is a problem and it is there and humans are causing it. And we need to be doing something about it, and really, that's the truth.
Awesome. Well, we are at 7:30, and I know everyone's got their evenings to get to. We really appreciate you being here this evening, and a really huge thanks to the students at SES and to their teacher, Craig Johnson. for sharing with us such an awesome opportunity. You'll all be getting an email with the link to the pages and the evaluation. And please don't hesitate to be in touch with us if you have any other questions or feedback. Have an awesome evening and sign up for our next webinar if you haven't already. Thanks.
Are we off? We're out? Are you good? Our mic's off.